Hello everybody, this is Jacob Tapia, and I am excited about our time today. We are here live in central Indiana, and I am excited today to have my mother with me. She's going to be talking in just a little while, but we're talking today a little bit about love. It's Valentine's Day today. I don't know, you may be right in the middle of a Valentine's Day lunch, or maybe you're shopping for a gift for that special someone. Whatever you're doing, thank you for tuning in with us. And right now, I want to just talk to you a little bit about an article that I read and was just looking through this. About the title of the article is, let me see if I can find it here, but it's talking about the effects and the impact and how love can help you have better health. Now, for the most part, I think it's talking about the excitement of love, and we know that a lot of that can be infatuation, emotional, but we all have had that feeling when your heart skips a beat and you just, you see somebody that maybe they look really beautiful or handsome. That is called that falling in love, that rush of emotion. Have you ever experienced that? Something triggers in our bodies, and it's interesting that the article I was reading talks about how your brain actually releases high levels of dopamine or serotonin, and I don't understand all these things, but it's interesting that our bodies react when we feel that, that rush, that emotions. Have you experienced that before? And really, this is called the love hormone with oxytocin because it creates strong bonds. Now, it's interesting to me, this article is talking about love, and it begins to talk about feelings and chemicals, and it's very clinical. But at the same time, another article is talking about the effects of love in marriage. So actually how marital status is associated with better health. Now this is interesting because it's talking about how a long-term marriage can impact your body physically, just your heart. And so when we're talking about the effects, when what we consider like emotions, our heart, like, man, I just fell in love, my heart is beating for her. We know that your health is impacted by a long-term marriage relationship. And one of these articles I was reading was talking about how that being married affects and lowers your risk factors and gives you a better health status. Very interesting to me. I've been married for 12 years, and I remember meeting my wife in Frankfort, Indiana, and the moment that I saw my wife, I thought she was very beautiful. She was involved in her church, and she was singing on the platform. I think they were having a practice, and I remember that feeling, that rush, if you'd say, and how much I was like, wow, she is beautiful. Here I am 12 years later. We've been married for 12 years. We have 2 children, 1 on the way. And I think it's important to recognize there's more to love than just feelings. And I want to just talk about that today. I have my mother on the line with me today. Mom, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome to our show today, and I'm glad that you're able to join me today. So this is my second broadcast doing this radio, and I'm just thankful to have you on today. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on.
I was just looking at one of our Facebook comments. J.D. McGee says he's been married 40 years. He said, and Julie, his wife, is like fine wine. She gets better with age.
Wonderful.
Now, you've been married how many years?
39 years. In December, we were just married.
39 years. So, as you were listening to me talk about those articles and about love, what comes to your mind?
Well, I remember seeing your dad for the first time and feeling those exact things in my heart. Just did a lot of fluttering there, and he had a full head of hair. He was dark and handsome, and I fell in love just by looking at him. But then as the years went on and we got married, and I can really feel everything that you talked about there, about feeling the health in having marriage in our life and feeling strength in that. And I believe those articles that you read were so true. And I can say that I really have felt that in our marriage.
That's wonderful. And I was just thinking about some of this when we talk about love. You know, I think there's definitely the attraction factor, but I think beyond that, and this may be where sometimes where our society can kind of miss it a little bit, is that in order to have a long-term relationship, like for you in your case, 39 years, J.D. McGee saying 40 years for them, I think it takes more than that initial moment, that fluttering of the heart, so to speak. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
So I think, and maybe some of our viewers on Facebook Live, tell us if you're married, how long have you been married? Give us an idea. And also, would you agree it takes more than feelings to have a long-term marriage or a long-term relationship? So Mom, when you're thinking about that in aspects of moving beyond the feelings, how do you see that playing out in people's lives?
Well, I believe that when I got past just the feelings and really began to get to know your dad, and that trust relationship, that trust factor moved in, and just that feeling of security every time I was around him, that grew into a love that was so emotional that even when we're apart, we feel it. And I think that trust factor, that security factor, plays into such a big role into marriage. That I think is also where the health comes in. Is when you feel that security, you don't have the stress, you don't have the situations in your marriage that cause you pain and heartache. When you have that trust and that relationship, I believe that is a big thing that has helped me and your dad and have a strong marriage.
And, you know, J.D. McGee here made a comment, and he said that some of the things looks like that are important to developing this kind of relationship beyond that initial feeling is commitment. He says dedication, forgiveness, communication, loyalty, and trust. If you agree with that, make a comment. What is it? What do you think are the keys to kind of connecting and staying together? I think that commitment is a big thing. You know, one thing, and I know a little bit about some of these stories, some of these people that are commenting. David Stevenson says, Patty and I will celebrate 27 years in June. He says, feelings go away when the bills come through the door. You have to be committed to staying together no matter what life hands you. It's not 50-50, but 100-100. Each person giving their all to make their marriage succeed. Excellent comment. I think that's very true, is that there has to be a commitment. But then at the same time, when you begin a marriage relationship, you're coming from two different cultures, two different backgrounds, and in your case, two completely different cultures.
Yeah.
How was that, learning to kind of cope with those things and just kind of get along?
We did, and when we were first married, your dad's English wasn't the best, but he learned very quickly, and he wanted to learn, and so culture was a big thing. But I think I was so willing to learn, and he was so willing to learn the American way, that is what helped our marriage, that we didn't argue and fight over those things, that it was more of a willingness to learn. And through that, we've given and taken, both of us. And he's taught me many things. He even taught me how to cook, how to do many things. And so I've become a good cook because of him. But, yes, culture is a huge thing. But if you have that culture difference, then I believe that there has to be a willingness to learn and to be taught. And the language was a really big thing for your dad. And he told me, if I'm saying something wrong, please correct me. I want to know how to say it the right way. And so I think that is a really big thing to be living in the United States. He became a U.S. citizen in 1984 and hasn't looked back. And I believe that is a big thing. And the comment before about forgiveness, our marriage has been built on forgiveness. And so from the very beginning, we have practiced that. And I think that has been a bond that has held us, the glue that has held us together also.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, especially when you're coming from different cultures or different backgrounds, for example, I grew up in Minnesota. My wife grew up in Indiana. There's just different ways of doing things, and I think when you're doing something one way all of your life, and then someone says, "Well, let's do it this way," and just do it automatically. Sometimes that can be that can cause some friction there, but I think what you were saying, you're talking about how you can actually help each other. So by being with someone, you can actually, I guess, learn and grow, and that's a great way to look at it. Carla Gentry says, when things are rough, stop and remember why you fell in love in the first place. I think that's great advice.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. And if you're just joining us today, I'm talking with Twyla Tapia, my mother. Been married 39 years, and we're just talking about love and commitment and just relationships in general on Valentine's Day. So let's talk a little bit about that that forgiveness aspect, that kind of I don't want to say giving each other a pass necessarily when something's been done wrong, but are there ever times when we offend each other or get on each other's nerves, and we don't mean to? How do we stay in connected or in the flow when we're dealing with those differences?
That is a very real thing. Many times we do things that we are unaware of, and they do offend the other person. But during those times, like in our relationship, your dad has come to me and said, that has really bothered me. You do this or that, and I will reflect and look and say, you know what, you're right. And now I have a hard time sometimes admitting that, that he is right. But I do see, and it's not my intent to offend or to hurt. And so in that case, I do have to humble myself and say, it's true. I did that, and I'm sorry. Would you please forgive me? It was not my intent to hurt you, and I will do my very best to not do that again. And I'm not saying that I have never done it again, because I may fall into that trap. If it's been a habit, I may end up doing it again. But that forgiveness is always there, and we're very open to talking about things that offend us. And I think that's, too, sometimes it's hard to hear things because we might not see it as an offense, or why are you getting offended over something like that? But if they come to us and tell us that that is an offense, it's something we do need to look at and be aware of and admit to ourselves. It maybe isn't a big deal to me, but it is a big deal to them. And I want them to be happy. I don't want them to be feeling this stress on their life because of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, we do have to be open and understand that we're not perfect. But to me, the best way to develop and grow is in a loving, committed relationship. So that the person is committed to you, that loves you, that's giving. So, sometimes when I know early in a marriage relationship, and maybe some of you can comment on this, but how do you fight? What is it? What are the tools that you use to have a healthy fight? Because sometimes conflict can actually be a blessing. It can be a time when you can talk about things. And I love what you said there. It was you are open and you can talk about things. And I think early, and maybe it's as we grow, as we continue in that committed relationship, it becomes easier to talk about things without this feeling of like you're against me, or you're. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, you're attacking me, or you're. Yeah, it's not an attack. It's just, and you're right. I think as the years go on, in the beginning part of our marriage, it wasn't that easy to bring up something that hurt me, because, I would feel like, okay, I'm picking at him. Well, it's not picking if it's, but if it's, okay, this is the one thing your dad always tells me. He always tells me, it's the way you say it. So that is also a very important thing, is how we say it. If we say it in an attacking way, yes, it is going to feel like an attack. But if we say it in a gentle way, it makes a big, big difference in how we say it.
True. And we have said those wrong things. and that's also part of learning, and even in a family too. I think the people you deal with, just in general, you have to learn how to talk to people. And J.D. McGee, he says again, well, he's really got some good comments here. He says, Julie and I do not fight, but we have many loud discussions. Oh, that's great. That's great. And sometimes our language, what I'm finding, something that really helped me is to state my intent. So I learned this from a book that I had read called Crucial Conversations, and it was talking about how to have conversations that might be very, tense, or something that could cause problems. And if you're just joining us, I'm talking with my mother today, Twyla Tapia, and we're talking about relationships, about marriage, about communication, just some of these things that impact us on a daily basis. But one thing that I found to be effective is to state my intent, or state kind of upfront what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. So In the past, I might say things like, why did you do that? Just very direct. And so I'm learning to be more, to maybe just say things like, I'm really trying to understand you better. I really think you're a nice person, and I'd like to get to know you better. Can you explain to me why you did that? So does that make sense? So the intent can sometimes break down the question, or it can kind of diffuse that. Would you agree?
Yes, I do. And I think the key there really is because when we state what we feel immediately, we're speaking without really thinking. And so to stop and really think, okay, how can I diffuse this? Then those gentler words are going to come out. To just take that deep breath and go, okay, think about it.
Sometimes that's a long breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good too, is that sometimes right now is not always the best time to deal with things. It could be that, let's take some time, let's think about this. One thing that has really helped me in some of these things is writing it out. And just by the time I get done writing things out, my mind's a little more clear. I can really focus on, what is the heart of this situation. So if you're just joining us today, we're talking about relationships, about love, about marriage, just communication, just some different factors related to Valentine's Day. One of the things that I wanted to go over and just talk about real quick, one of the things that most of us do for our person that we love is give gifts. And what would you say, and maybe some of our Facebook listeners can comment, what's the best gift that you've ever received on a Valentine's Day? And Mom, maybe you want to think about that a minute. What is the best gift? Now, does it matter if it's expensive? Does it have to be what are the factors that make up a good Valentine's Day gift? So what would you say, Mom?
Well, I have, gifts are a big thing, like from the beginning of our marriage, having the culture difference. Dad never was a really huge Valentine Day birthday gift, nothing like that, because he didn't grow up in that culture where that was so important. And so I used to get very hurt by that. But as the years went on, I began to accept that of him. And now these later years, he gives me flowers, he takes me out to, it's totally different. And so he's learned all of those things that we Americans tend to do. But I think the best times that I have on Valentine's Day, my birthday, things like that, is to spend time with them, to go do something special. If we go to Rochester to go shopping and go out to eat, or just to spend that quality time together, really is truly a great gift for me. I love the flowers. I'm glad he doesn't do chocolates anymore. But anyway, those things are all great. And to me, that's spending the time is a really great thing.
And David Stevenson commented, he said, time together, so mirroring your comment, time together, it costs nothing, but means so much.
Yes.
And very true, very true. I was thinking back to a session that I was at where a man was talking about his wife. She had recently passed away from an illness, and he was telling us, myself and the other people that were there, about his wife and just some of the things that they fought about, or things that were bothering him, that he said those things are trivial now. When you look back about some of the things that really cause tension and cause problems, now it doesn't seem so, I don't know, the longer you're married or the longer you're in that relationship, those things don't really matter as much. Would you agree?
I agree, yes. Yep, you look back and think, why did we even do that? Why did we spend time on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do agree with that.
Yeah, Carla Gentry says time and hanging out. She says, I always